standing for the jury?
Everybody be seated, please. May proceed, Mr. Prince.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Dr. De La Cruz, I want to start out general and then get more specific with these questions. First, can you explain to us the relationship within the drug trafficking trade between the Colombian cartels, the Mexican cartels, and then the American criminal organization?
Well, primarily the Colombian cartels are the ones that supply the Mexican cartels, especially when it comes to cocaine. When it comes to methamphetamine, they supply most of the drugs, but the Mexican cartels now have evolved too. They produce a lot of their own drugs too. All right, so then the Mexican cartels bring it into the United States, and they employ the services of different gangs in different cities, like Chicago, LA, Miami, different places, right? And the local gangs from any specific areas are the ones that are in charge of the distribution in the neighborhoods.
Okay. So essentially the Colombians are the producers, the Mexican cartels are like the middlemen, and then the American gangs do the street level distribution of the product and sell it.
Correct.
Okay. In terms of who experiences a loss, so if there's a loss in the United States of product, if law enforcement gets it or something happens, it gets stolen, whatever the case might be, who absorbs that loss? Is it the Mexican cartels, the American organization that's supposed to sell it on the street, or is it the Colombians? Or does everybody share?
The Mexican cartels do not take the loss of merchandise very lightly. Somebody is going to pay somehow, whether it's the individual who was in charge of the operation on the street level, or many times, for example, let's say that I'm dealing with the cartels and I'm the guy in charge of, and they give me, let's say, 10 kilos of cocaine, and somehow I get arrested and I lose it. They will generally kill my whole family to let everybody else know this is not acceptable. Somebody's going to pay.
That's kind of where I was heading next.
Okay.
Are there general criteria, I guess, that are typical of a cartel hit, specifically a Mexican cartel hit? Is there any kind of standard methodology to the tactics they employ?
Well, cartels generally, when they do hits, they kill the entire family. They don't leave, because their logic is that child is going to get older later and they become a problem. So they come in, and also they do that to instill fear in not the community but the underworld. See, everything is geared towards the underworld. What they do, they're not concerned about what Miss Hernandez and her family thinks about it, because they're not involved. Now, they can have their thoughts and their opinions, but they're not trying to target them. They're dealing with people that are dealing in the underworld. So the message to them is, if you mess with us, if you lose this, if you lose that, this is what happens to you or your family.
And is there anything that's, I guess, standard or reoccurring in terms of the method by which they dispatch people that are responsible for stolen product or lost product?
The way they kill them?
Yes.
Well, generally it's pretty gruesome. They kill them in a gruesome manner. The message has to be towards the underworld that this is the way we kill people. Most of the time they decapitate people, they beat them to death. There's different methodologies that they use, but it's always gruesome.
Okay. Let me ask you about the potential involvement of a female in a group that's targeting someone for assassination. Is that something common, and if so, why is that common?
That the cartel,
Would utilize a female within the team that's been sent to kill somebody?
no, the females are usually, and I know that, you know, this idea that I haven't been a member of the gang for 40 years, that I don't know what I'm talking about, but the truth of the matter is that methodology has been used for years. The woman is used because if somebody knocks on the door and it's a female, pretty much people on the other side of the door are going to be less worried or careful because it's a woman. But the woman is used to so that they will open the door, that so others can rush in. That's what the woman's used for, not to commit the murder itself, only to help them gain entry.
What about potential child victims? Is that something that you see as a repetitive theme within cartel murders?
Absolutely, they kill whole entire families. They do that. That's what they do.
And why do they do that?
Once again, it's to send a message to the underworld that if you, especially if you have family, if you do something wrong or steal from us or whatever the case may be, or snitch on us or whatever, then this is what we do to people like, to your people, to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
And let me ask you about the Los Zetas cartel in particular. You indicated that you had family members that were members of the Los Zetas cartel.
I had one family member who was, he's no longer with us. He was shot by the Mexican authorities in a shootout in the plaza in Reynosa, Tamaulipas.
Did you ever have an opportunity to conduct first-person interviews with him about his experience?
I did.
Okay. Through those interviews, were you able to ascertain whether there is any particular symbol associated with the Zetas cartel?
I was.
What is their symbol?
So one of the things they leave behind, and it's not left for, once again, law enforcement, because law enforcement wouldn't know anyway. It's left for the underworld as a message. This is who did this, and this is what will happen to you if you mess with us or mess with our money or whatever the case may be, whatever it is that they did, right? And so he told me, because I explained that, what does it mean when they leave a spade? And he goes, in Spanish, he told me it's.
Your Honor, I'm going to object this to hearsay. Overruled.
He indicated in Spanish, es el as de espadas, which means in the cards, it's an ace of spade. Now, he said that the Zetas have a military background. And he said that the ace of spade in the military in Mexico indicates death. And so that is the manner in which they send the message, the Zetas, through that ace of spade to other people, underworld people, that it was them, and that if you mess with us, this was going to happen.
And again, in terms of repetitive themes in the way that murders are carried out, do the Zetas and other Mexican cartels typically send a single individual or multiple individuals to commit these murders?
No, generally it's more than one, but it could be one, but it depends on the number of people. So, for example, and they've done their homework, they know how many people are involved and how many people are there, or whatever the case may be. And so based on the number of individuals who live in the home, they would send that number of people, not necessarily 4, but I mean, they would send more than one, I believe, from what he told me, if, you know, to make sure that the act was, you know, committed and taken care of.
Now, you had a chance in this case to review crime scene photos, correct?
I normally don't, but I wanted to see these.
Okay. And other case-related documents and information, correct?
That's correct.
As well as have conversations with the defense reconstructionist, Mr. Knox, correct?
That's correct.
Now, I don't want you to testify about anything Mr. Knox told you, nor do I want an opinion about whether you ultimately think this offense was a cartel hit. What I'd like to know is if you have any opinion as to whether there are indicators, based on the evidence you reviewed, of potential cartel involvement in these murders.
Everything that I reviewed points directly towards the Zetas. And you know, the spade, the way it was placed against the wall, it didn't have any blood. It wasn't used in the murder. It was a clear message, right? So it was all by itself, according to the pictures that I reviewed, next to the lady's body, right, on the wall. It didn't have no blood, so to me it indicated that it wasn't used in the murder itself. The viciousness of the way the children were killed, and the way the victim was, the mother was killed, you know, beaten, shot, stabbed. I mean, you know, the viciousness of the crime itself indicates to me, and I've done a lot of, you know, cases, and they're vicious as well, but not like this, and not where they have children, especially when it deals with gangs.
So this is on the high end of violence, even for cartels.
Well, it's definitely high end.
Thank you. No further questions.
Doctor, now we talked a little bit during the board hour of your qualifications about you served time in prisons, but how many prior felony convictions do you have?
I believe it's 5.
And another thing I don't think we've covered up or covered is that you're being paid for your testimony here today. Is that correct?
Just like you, yes.
So,
Everybody gets paid here except the jury.
okay.
Crime pays really well.
But I'm
except
not
the jurors.
testifying. You're testifying.
I understand, and I'm answering your question. I get paid.
Okay, let's not be smart aleck, please.
Okay.
All right.
I get paid.
Proceed, Mr. Evans.
What's your hourly rate?
I charge $200 an hour.
And how many hours have you billed in this case?
I think so far, $26,000.
Okay. And that doesn't include
This time.
this time, your
Correct.
travel here and the time you've been waiting here and your testimony for the day.
Correct, correct.
And how long have you been in town? Or have you been traveling? How long have you been on the clock this time?
I left Tuesday at 2 o'clock California time, and I've been here since.
Okay. And so you're at $200 an hour for that time period?
Well, not when I'm asleep, but other than that, you know.
Okay. Now, you've never testified for the state or the federal government, is that correct?
No, that's correct.
And you've indicated that there are no peer-reviewed academic studies on whether something is a Zeta murder or not. Is that correct?
Well, let me clarify something. Afterward, I was thinking, if you go to Google Scholar, which is a peer-reviewed search engine, that is, everybody knows about it, and everybody agrees that it's reliable. I believe there are studies or information, there's information there that can support whatever it is you're looking for. Maybe, maybe not. But
So
I don't know any directly studies. I do know of a book, The Wolf Boys, that was written about the Zetas.
Who wrote the book?
I don't remember the gentleman's name, but I mean, I'm sure if you Google it, you can find him.
And did I understand you to say if you go to this Google Scholar, you can Google it and pretty much find anything you want to support whatever
Pretty much.
opinion you have?
I think you can, yes.
Okay.
Or not find it if it's not there.
Now, a lot of opinions that you've expressed today are based upon your Google searches, which included reading online newspaper articles, magazine articles, and things such as that. Is that correct?
That's not correct. I mean, some of them, I've used some of those, but my opinion is based on that and the discovery that was provided by you folks, well, not you, but to the defense, the discovery and the interviews that I conducted with individuals that are in the know of cartels and so forth and so on. So there's a number of elements.
Well, let me be a little bit more precise, my question, if my question wasn't clear. Your opinion about whether or not something constitutes a Zeta crime scene is based on your reading newspaper articles and Googling the subject, as well as talking to your now deceased cousin. Is that correct?
That's part, again, the gruesomeness of the crime itself, the fact that they killed children. I'm not saying that other people don't kill children, but generally speaking, cartels, that's their MO, modus of operandi. They kill the entire family, the viciousness of how they did it, and more importantly, the spade, the shovel that was left.
Now, you're assuming something a cartel killing would generally include somebody who's cheated the cartel. Is that correct?
Generally,
Well, the Mexican cartel, they don't send people up to commit hits in the United States for people who steal from street level gangs. Is that correct? Because they've got no skin in that game because they've already been paid by the street level gang for the drugs that the street level gang is selling. Is that correct?
unless the street level gang pays the cartel to do the killing, that because, for example, let's say hypothetically that these drugs or whatever the case may be were from them to begin with, then I'm sure they would.
And you're sure they would because?
Because I was a criminal myself for a long time, involved in criminal organization, and I know how the criminal mind works. And so, and everything that I've learned and everything that I've heard from people that I've interviewed, you cannot mess with cartels or they're going to get you. They might not do it tomorrow, but they're eventually going to get you. That's why.
So the Mexican cartels are now being hired, are now being hired by local street gangs to commit murders in the street gangs' territories.
I don't know if they're now, but I'm sure they did at that time, in this particular case.
And you're basing that on the review of the crime scene photos.
Well, that and the discovery and everything that I know about it, interviews of different witnesses.
And you're basing these opinions on your personal review of what you've read on the internet, people you've talked to, but as it relates directly to the Zetas and how they conduct the hits, that, I think as you previously testified, is relied on solely by your now dead cousin.
Not solely on him. He was a Zeta, so he knew the inner workings. He did time for them. He was pretty close to the people on top, so he understood what was going on. He didn't know about this particular case specifically because there's so many people, so many cases, so many things going on. But I wasn't only basing it on that. That is, I base it on the viciousness of the crime, the shovel against the wall, not being used in the crime, his information to me about how the modus of operandi that they use when people do something against them, and of course all the research that I did on Google Scholar and all that in the internet.
Did you rely in your opinions the statements of Carlos Santos?
I did.
Now, isn't it true that you based your opinion on that cartels use women to help gain entry is because one was used when I believe it was your brother who was murdered in 1977?
That wasn't a cartel. That was a criminal organization, but it's not based on that. I used to do it myself back in the day when I was involved. It's not an uncommon thing to use a woman. People's guards drop when a woman knocks on the door and they see it's a woman, as opposed to two men standing on the front door. I don't think that a woman is going to open the door for two men that they don't know. But they will when there's a woman, even maybe they don't even know her, but it's a woman. So it's on their level. So it's just a psychological thing. And, we, as back then, as gang members, we used to study all that stuff.
And again, you indicated that your last gang experience was more than 40 years ago.
My personal gang experience as a
Yes.
gang member? Yes.
Now, you say cartels send a message by doing killings of families if somebody hasn't paid them or if they've been wronged by people. Is that correct?
Pretty much, yeah.
And that they leave it in such a manner that you know that it is the drug cartel has committed the crime.
It's a clear message to the underworld, not to law enforcement, because the law enforcement doesn't know, but to the underworld, the people that are involved with cartels, it's a clear message to them that this is what happens, this is who did it.
So you're telling me that law enforcement wouldn't know these signs or to look for these signs?
Well, they didn't know about it on this sign. They didn't know about the shovel in this particular case. I never heard law enforcement say anything about that shovel. In fact, they were confused about the shovel when I read. So, yes, I am saying that.
All right, so law enforcements don't have confidential informants. They don't have people who infiltrate the cartels. They don't compare notes whenever they're looking at crime scenes, whenever you have multiple where family members are being killed at multiple places. People don't compare and contrast as they try to investigate to see if these crimes are related or not.
Well, there's no doubt they have confidential informants. Now, the confidential informant is that with the information they're giving them reliable, because there's not really any way for you could, most of the time, corroborate what they're telling you. So that's one. I give you that one. But do they share with each other? I'm sure they do. But what I'm saying is that in particular case, they didn't seem to share with nobody, with any other law enforcement. Now, I'm not sure because I'm not law enforcement, so I couldn't tell you specifically or concretely that they did or did not. What I do know is that spade was never explained the way my cousin, who was a Zeta member, explained it. That's what I'm saying.
All right, so your premise rises and falls on what your dead cousin supposedly told you a few years ago.
Not supposedly, he did tell me. There's no supposedly about it.
Do you have it recorded?
No, I don't have it recorded.
You have it documented in any way?
I don't.
So the only person who knows about it and can recant it and tell us what he said is you.
Absolutely.
Now, you say the number of people who are being killed dictates the amount of people who come in and do the killing. Is that correct?
I think that's one of the elements they use. For example, when they killed my brother, there was 1, 2, 3, and a woman. So the woman was used to knock on the door, and he answered the door, and then 2 guys rushed in. There was a guy driving, so there was 3 for 1 person. It was supposed to be me, but I wasn't there, so it was my brother. Okay. Generally speaking, they're not going to send one guy to commit a homicide in a home. They're just not going to do it. Not one guy. It's going to be multiple guys.
And a woman.
Well, I would imagine they used a woman.
Now, the killings, or the relationship between the gangs, if the Mexican cartel is the ones that have been wrong, they're going to exact their punishment, correct?
Correct.
Do they do it themselves or do they hire it out?
No, they generally do it themselves.
And are you familiar with the vice lords?
Yeah, Chicago, yeah.
Do they handle their own problems?
I don't know if they handle all of their problems, but they do.
And the Zeta handles their problems?
Yeah, yep.
Now, and you say the ace of spades your cousin talked about. That sign is left there so other people in the underworld will know that this was a Zeta hit, correct?
Correct.
So anybody who knows about the case or looks into the case and sees that shovel will know this is a Zeta hit.
Well, not everybody.
Now, what am I talking about? Other Zetas, for instance.
Sure, of course.
A situation where somebody is trying to show that, hey, I fixed the problem, so don't blame me about it anymore. They would leave a sign at the scene as a calling card.
I don't think that has anything to do with being blamed. I think it has to do with being wronged. They don't go kill people because you're blaming them. They go kill people. The cartels kill people when they feel that they've been wronged. Okay? Or if someone pays them, then they might do it because they were indirectly connected. Maybe the person was selling drugs that originated from them, so they may get involved in something like that.
But they would leave their call signs so anybody who sees it would know that they're the ones who've committed the crime.
Anybody involved in the underworld.
Do they admit that they commit the crime? The individuals who commit the crime go out and brag about it?
Well, I'm sure they brag about it if you read the Wolf Boys, they used to brag to each other.
To each other?
Yeah.
They don't go knocking on law enforcement's door saying, hey, I did it, do they?
No.
So if the Zetas were to look at these crime scene photos, they would see that it was a Zeta hit.
I'm sure they would, yeah.
So there'd be no reason for somebody to go around and say, hey, I'm the one who did it, and tell that to law enforcement who somehow publishes out there, because there wouldn't be a need to because the sign is in the photograph.
Well, I couldn't say that because I don't understand. I don't know why somebody would do that unless they were indirectly involved or directly involved. So,
But they wouldn't need to do it because they've left their sign.
the Zetas left their sign. But the other guy, whoever he is, if he's not involved with the Zetas, has nothing to do with him. He's not a Zeta.
He's not a Zeta, so he's not involved in it.
Well, he's not involved in the actual killing. He could be involved in other ways.
Now, you say the shovel is the sign of a calling card because it was not used during the commission of the offense, and that it was laid beside the body to show this is our handiwork.
Yes.
And it was against the wall?
What's against the law?
Against the wall next to the body?
I think it was
testified
against.
that's where it was.
I think it was against the wall. I don't remember specifically, but I think it was a picture that I saw.
Doctor, what's your date of birth?
4/15/1951.
No. No further questions.
Thank you.
Redirect. Very good.
When there's an existing drug trafficking organization that involves Colombian Mexican cartels, if somebody who's a part of that drug trafficking organization brings in someone else who ultimately ends up ripping off somebody that's a part of that, who is responsible for that?
The person that brought them in,
And if the person who brings them in doesn't take care of it, what happens to that person?
they kill them.
No further questions.
Any juror have a question of this witness? All right, you can step down.
Thanks.
We need to keep him further. No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
We need him to agree. No, sir. Are you excused? Call you next week.
Just on the defense of Paul, Mark Lewis. I mean, it's just approaching people all these.
You can see it. You remain under oath.
Yes, Your Honor.
Right there. Nate, on this side of the fire. State your name for purposes of the record. I know you testified once already.
Yes, Your Honor. Mark Lewis.
May proceed, Mr. Prince.
Investigator Lewis, at some point during the investigation of this case, members of the Tallahassee Police Department, forensic team and investigators responded to Jack McLean Park, correct?
Yes, sir.
Inside Jack McLean Park, kind of at the back of the park, if you would go off to the right instead of going straight by the pool and all that, there's a bathhouse, right?
There is.
And a pavilion, like a picnic pavilion back there as well?
Yes.
And this was what, like 5, 6, 7 days after the murder? You guys responded there?
I know it was after the homicide. I can't tell you exactly. I want to say about a week or maybe a little more or a little less. Something like
Okay. And who all went out there?
I know it was myself, Investigator Corbett, Investigator Dubrava,
And then forensic people as well?
forensic person, yes.
Okay. And y'all discovered a trash can containing multiple items that had been burned up, correct? Or had been on fire to some extent?
The can was on fire. The items were not.
Okay. Did it appear that, like the top of the bag and the top of the items on top inside the trash can had been lit on fire as well?
If I can, these are pictures of it. I need to reference it, if that's okay.
Yes, sir. For reference, he's picking up what'll be Defense Composite Exhibit 9A through EE.
I see the can that you're talking about, sir.
And so it looks like it was set on fire.
The bag looks torn, but I guess.
And y'all did determine, in fact, that it was there was ash and singed
Yes.
items and all that. Okay. Inside the trash can, there were a number of items located. A T-shirt that had suspected blood on it. Is that right?
Yes.
And you have that item there as well, correct?
It says a white collared shirt.
That's one of them, and then that other bag next to it.
White T-shirt with suspected blood, yes.
And That was recovered from inside the trash can.
Yes.
And similarly, the collared shirt was recovered from inside the trash can.
Yes.
And then there were a bunch of latex gloves that had suspected blood on them as well, correct?
Yes.
And another set of gray gloves that had suspected blood, correct?
I don't see the gray gloves that you referenced.
In the pictures, you mean?
I don't.
One of those exhibits there has all those gray gloves in a single evidence bag. Can you look at that and let me know which TPD number that is? I think it was 12A. Maybe I'm wrong about that. So the gray gloves were 12A. You all just gave it a single evidence number for the gray gloves. And then the,
12A's right here.
you see that?
Yes.
Okay. That was discovered inside the trash can as well, right?
Yes.
And then the latex gloves, those were TPD numbers 7A through 11A?
That's correct.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, without objection from the state, I would admit the pictures, which was pre-marked for identification, is Defense Composite Exhibit 9A through EE. Defense Exhibit number 22, the white T-shirt. Defense Exhibit number 23, the white collared shirt. Defense Composite Exhibit number 24A through E, the latex gloves. And Defense Composite Exhibit 25A through F, the other gloves, the gray gloves from Jack McLean.
Second.
No, Your Honor.
All right, that'll be admitted.
No further questions for the witness.
Rob?
Yes, sir.
Officer Lewis, you testified that law enforcement officers responded to that location about a week after the homicide.
Correct.
Fair to say at that particular time, you're doing everything, forensics are still outstanding, you do everything you can to track down anything that may possibly be related to this particular homicide?
Absolutely.
Isn't it true that during the course of your investigation and subsequent follow-up, you determined that those trash cans in that park was cleaned up on almost a daily basis?
That's correct.
So subsequent to that, you would have learned that something that was found a week later really would have no bearing at all on the homicide itself.
That's correct.
No further questions.
Redirect.
Investigator Lewis, you never called anybody from City of Tallahassee Parks and Rec to find out if those trash cans were actually changed out, correct?
During that time, I did not.
And your testimony is based on your experience. You believed that the trash cans were changed every day, right?
It's my knowledge that they are, or supposed to be.
They're supposed to be.
Yes.
Now, this was Thanksgiving week, right?
I guess so.
And how far roughly was Jack McLean from Brandy Peters' house?
Relatively close.
Okay, like a quarter mile, maybe less?
Never tracked it out, but it's close.
Something like that, roughly.
With a quarter mile, half mile, somewhere like that.
Yes, sir. No further questions.
Okay. Any juror have a question? All right, you can step down. Collect those items. Yes, sir.
At this time, the defense will call Diane Guzman.
Somebody get
Diane Guzman.
Come on up here, please, if you're open. We're waiting. You can take the clerk to this one, please. Right here.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do.
Have a seat. Right at the railing, please. ma'am. May proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Guzman, can you please introduce yourself to the jury and spell both your first and last name?
Yes, my name is Diane Guzman, Dianeguzman.
And what do you do for a living?
I am a crime lab analyst at the Florida Department of Law Enforcement in the biology section.
What does that mean exactly?
It means I test items of evidence for the presence of biological materials. I isolate DNA from those items and develop a profile. I compare evidentiary profiles to profiles from known individuals, and I write reports.
Okay. And can you tell me a little bit about your education, training, and experience that enables you to perform that analysis?
Yes, I have a bachelor's degree in biology with a minor in chemistry from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. I was originally hired in 2007 by the Wisconsin State Crime Laboratory, where I performed DNA analysis. I underwent a year-long intensive training program there, run by the NFSTC, which stands for the National Forensic Science and Technology Center. Later, I was employed by FDLE in Tallahassee here, and I underwent approximately 6 months of additional training.
Okay. And do you have to maintain any accreditation or certificate of good standing or anything like that in order to be able to conduct the testing that you've described at the Florida Department of Law Enforcement?
Yes, I am certified by FDLE, and this includes yearly training and reading relevant materials specific to DNA analysis.
And have you ever been qualified as an expert to testify on DNA in court?
Yes, I have.
Approximately how many times?
Approximately 10.
Okay. At this time, I would tender the witness.
And board hire.
No, Your Honor.
May proceed.
Ms. Guzman, did you analyze a couple of exhibits in this case?
Yes, I did.
Can you tell us what you analyzed?
Yes, did you want to go specifically by report, or do you have a particular item you want
I'm
to know
referring,
about?
yes, ma'am, I'm referring to your report dated March 26, 2018. And we'll be looking at Agency Exhibit 6A and 13A, FDLE 207-208. Those items are in front of you right there.
Okay. Yes, I did examine, regarding that specific report, 3 items. FDLE Item 116, which is Agency Exhibit 126, swab of grab bar in tub. FDLE Item 207, which is Agency Exhibit 6A, a white T-shirt. And FDLE Item 208, which is Agency Exhibit 13A, which was a white collared shirt.
I guess we can, this exhibit is not in front of you. We can deal with Exhibit 126, which is in evidence as State 63, the swab of the bath bar. You weren't able to get sufficient DNA from the remaining part of the swab on that one, correct?
I was not.
So no analysis could be performed on that.
After the quantification process, no DNA analysis was performed. That's correct.
Okay. And let's talk for a second about Exhibit or Agency Exhibit 6A, which is in evidence as Defense Exhibit 22. It's in front of you there on the bench.
Yes.
Do you recognize that item?
Yes, I do.
What, if any, analysis did you perform on that item?
On this item, I performed a presumptive test for the possible presence of blood, and that test was negative, so I did not continue any further testing.
Now, there was red-brown staining all over that, correct?
There was, yes.
When DNA, blood included, is exposed to high heat, fire especially, can that degrade the DNA?
Yes, it can degrade or damage the DNA.
And over time, obviously this item was collected in 2010, so it's been in someplace other than cold storage for a long time now. Can that cause further degradation of any DNA?
I'm actually not aware of the storage conditions of the item before it came to me. The generally ideal conditions for storing DNA are cool and dry. Any other conditions such as high heat, humidity, mold, those can all be damaging to the DNA.
And without going into any of the dates or who opened them or anything, can you tell from the packaging how many times that one's been opened?
No, I can't. I do see my initials on sealing tape, but I don't know how many times it's been examined.
Okay, so only FDLE would initial and make notation when they open it?
I'm not sure if
Okay.
other agencies do that.
Fair enough. Okay, so when DNA is degraded badly, can something that is blood, for example, give a negative indication for blood?
It's possible.
Okay. Let's move on to Exhibit 13A, which is in evidence as defense exhibit number 23. Did you perform analysis on that, the white collared shirt?
Yes, I did.
And what, if any, results were you able to figure out?
I sampled 7 different areas. 2 of those areas did not have enough DNA to go on for further testing. Of the 5 remaining areas, another 2 were too low level. The resulting profile was limited, not interpretable. The remaining 3 areas that were sampled gave results consistent with an unknown male individual that I subdesignated as male 1.
Okay. And the DNA or partial profile that you obtained for that unknown male, was that consistent from multiple locations on the shirt that you swabbed?
There were 3 samples that went on that resulted in the profile that I subdesignated as male 1. The 2 of the 3 were complete profiles. That means I had results at all of the areas tested. 1 was a partial profile, but they were all consistent with male 1.
Okay, so it's 1 male. Did you compare the partial profile for the unknown male to the profiles of the 4 victims in the case, as well as Henry Segura?
I did compare the profile to all of the standards that had been submitted in the case thus far, and everyone was excluded.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Father? One moment, Your Honor.
So 13A, that's the shirt that had DNA on it, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Positive for blood?
Defense exhibit 23 is that your
Yes, Your Honor.
Use the course number.
I'm sorry. So defense exhibit 23, which would be your 13A, had blood on it and DNA, correct?
The presumptive test for blood was positive, yes, and there was enough DNA to continue with testing.
And you tested this against 22 different buccal swabs that you had been sampled for as it relates to this particular case, correct?
I didn't count the number of known standards that had been submitted, but I did compare my results to all of the standards that were submitted, and every individual was excluded.
Mr. Prince asked you about 3 or 4 or 5 of them, but bottom line is it's a lot more than that, wasn't it? Give
A
your
lot
report there.
more.
Standards.
There were many standards.
Okay.
Yes.
Why don't you count it for me real quick, please?
I count 23,
23.
yes.
And not a single one came back in a match in any way, shape, or form, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, isn't it true that a dry shirt typically, if a shirt was dried out and typically stored at room temperature, it really wouldn't degrade DNA, correct?
If it was stored at room temperature, depending on the humidity, if it was stored in direct sunlight, it seems like that should be fine.
Okay. Well, it really wouldn't degrade blood either, correct?
Under ideal conditions, no.
And actually, I guess it was 22 was the other white shirt?
You're right.
Okay. 22, your 6A, both 22 and 23 were both collected at the same time, according to the bags, correct?
I'm not sure when they were collected, no, sorry.
Take a look at the bag real quick.
They both say 11/26/2010.
Okay. And actually, 23 gave indications for blood DNA, so it could be presumed that 22, if it was stored in the same manner, would also give those indications if they were in fact present at any time, correct?
It's possible, yes.
And white shirts, when they're burned, they typically turn black, do they not?
I assume so, yes.
Okay. That shirt that you tested there, 22, which is your 6A, that had not turned black from any fires or anything like that, had it?
Not to my recollection, no.
And item number 23, 13A, same thing.
Correct.
And in fact, there was nothing during your examination in 23 buccal swabs that gave any indication that these were related to the crime scenes or the victim's murder in any way, shape, or form, correct?
The specific areas that I tested on shirt 13A, all of the standards were excluded.
No further question.
Read it, Rick.
No, Your Honor.
All right, any juror have a question of this witness? All right, if not, you can step down. We need to keep her any further.
No, sir, she can be released.
Yes, you really.
Excuse, thank you for being here. Y'all want to take a break now, or you got to?
Yeah,
we
no,
don't
I don't.
Why don't we take 10 minutes? All right, let the jury step up. Peter, is that anything?
No, Your Honor.